Another Harris Town Hall, which I will tell you, when you're 13 days out, which is where she was yesterday from Election Day, and you're still going on CNN to answer hour and a half of questions from Anderson Cooper about basic stances on policy like the economy, and you can't figure out how to get a straight out economy message, well, those CNN commentators and journalists are no longer going to carry the water for you when you're now 12 days out from the election, because they're not going to say, well, everybody said on CNN that everything was fine and then we lost. So they're going to start now coming out and being a little bit more, I'd say, picky and a little bit more realistic and honest about the performance of Harris. And we saw that right away, Will, from Dana Bash.
She honestly had the demeanor that was very reminiscent of the demeanor of the team on CNN after that Joe Biden-Donald Trump debate, right. The one that caused Joe Biden to ultimately drop out of the race. And just hearing the commentators and anchors that were on there, they were not pleased with the performance of the vice president. And they also, as you mentioned, it seems like they are not willing to look like in 12, 13 days from now, be the ones that their credibility falls because they didn't tell people, wait, something could be amiss here.
Remember that CNN panel, if she had done well, would have been jumping up and down, praising the performance, saying this was what we needed from Harris. She's finally sealing the deal, telling about the issues. She's talking about what she would do differently. You know, she's not afraid to say, yeah, we need some border wall. I've figured that out over the last 3.5 years, that it's not going to be able to do it all without putting some more barriers in place. But instead, she won't even say that directly. She'll imply it, but it's something that even the commentators will say, and we'll get to it as well, which is that you can't just say over and over again that you're not going to change any positions. You can't always hold your ground. You've got to kind of concede something that you've learned as vice president that may have, again, if you're going to come out with a policy difference and run ads about showing all these border walls, that you got to come out and say, yeah, I do support building more of the border walls. And here's how it's different, that I'd like to do it different than President Trump. You could say that, or the areas I'd like to focus on, or where I think it needs to be versus maybe not as much. But you can't just say, whatever it takes, I support to secure the border, because that's not an actual policy position. That's just words. And again, I want to go to Dana Bash first, because Dana, again, is a reporter. At the end of the day, her credibility lies on how she analyzes interviews that she does and these town halls that she analyzes and watches. And when you get 12 days out, and they were 13 days out yesterday, but within 2 weeks of the election, it doesn't really matter where their politics fall, because their careers are also judged by, are they just being honest brokers about what they just watched? Or are they going to try and tell you that you didn't actually see what they saw, and it's somehow, however you saw it, was incorrect? They're not doing that anymore. So I think the gloves are off when it comes to at least places like CNN. MSNBC is sold out so far to the left. I think they would just... They wish Kamala Harris was even more liberal. So I'm not sure that, again, they're going to get a lot of criticism there, except criticism from the left coming a different way. But take a listen to Dana Bash, because, again, they are looking at their own careers. Now we're 12 days out, and when someone's having to do a town hall like this, you either close the deal or you don't. Take a listen.
I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. Some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses, or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there.
No legislative priorities. The one time she started off the question about a weakness, it was like, well, I like to really kick the can on issues. I like to really get in the weeds and get all the sides on issues and make sure that we're really well informed. But I actually see that as a strength. Well, that's not a weakness then. I mean, you're not answering the question.
It's kind of bizarre that she won't answer some of these questions, even like the legislative priorities. It wasn't that she said, well, I have three. I'm sorry you asked for one. I'll give you three.
Right.
No, she just said, I have a lot of priorities. The vagueness, for some reason, they think attack Trump because she called him a fascist last night.
Yeah.
So attack Trump and be vague is a winning combination.
They're one step away from calling him Hitler. And they're already pushing out articles by other people who are calling him Hitler. Now, they've called George W. Bush Hitler. We know that. I think Mitt Romney was called Hitler. Paul Ryan was called Hitler. So, I mean, it's a pretty broad category of Republicans.
I even saw someone post that Dewey, who was running for president against President Truman called him Hitler at one point.
Yeah.
So it goes far back that people in the Republican Party are called Hitler by Democrats.
This was a couple nights ago, right? Well, this is on NBC?
Yeah, this was the NBC interview with Hallie Jackson. This is the one that Kamala Harris took the day off campaigning to prepare for. It was pre-taped and then aired during NBC Nightly News. And we actually played this yesterday if you watched the broadcast, and we were calling out the concerns of it, and we're going to play it for a moment, and then we're going to talk with Cece about the timeliness of her making this policy statement and how it affects people that the ACLJ represent right now. Let's go ahead and play bite 2.
So is a question of pragmatism then, what concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example, is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
To Republicans like, for example, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, who would back something like this on a Democratic agenda if, in fact, Republicans control Congress, would you offer them an olive branch, or is that off the table? Is that not an option for you?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals, because we can go on with a variety of scenarios. Let's just start with a fundamental fact. A basic freedom has been taken from the women of America. The freedom to make decisions about their own body. And that cannot be negotiable, which is that we need to put back in the protections of Roe v. Wade. And that is it.
The protections of Roe v. Wade allowed for religious exemptions. So if she truly knew anything about these laws and really listened to her pro-abortion supporters, that's not what they're asking for. They want to go further. But in the meantime, we are seeing these issues in real time. So when she got asked that question about, hey, you could probably get some votes if you allowed for some exceptions, religious exceptions for those doctors, nurses, and other healthcare employees who feel like they've got, again, a conscious objection to participating in an elective abortion procedure. Okay, that is the basic line. Right now in the United States, you do. And you can argue that. You can fight that in court and usually win. You didn't learn anything from 3.5 years as vice president to think that maybe some things we should do or maybe you should handle differently?